Welcome back to the whole nine yards here on a Tuesday morning, actually, I guess technically 10:52. Brandon, how's it going?
Good. Yeah. I mean, we're this early, because I got stuff to do later today, but that's why we're this early. But still, we have a lot of NBA playoff games to recap. So that's the whole point of this episode. So yeah, there were some good games over the weekend, I think it'll be interesting to talk about.
My initial just first take about the whole weekend and the whole start of the playoffs, playing everything is this has probably been the best first round that I've maybe ever seen. Just as a basketball fan in general, I was always a honestly get rid of the first round, not necessarily get rid of the whole first round, but like I don't even need to see the one seed play the eight seed. Like it just the eight seed almost never wins. There's not really a point. If the only time the eight seed's ever going to win is if, the one seed's best player gets hurt, or if it's a super intense rivalry where the eight seed's like barely not even really an eight seed because, maybe something happens in the regular season. Like I don't need to see this. Like if it's the only times I can remember really eight seeds competing is like, you know, um I think the Bulls might have been the one seed that one time where the Sixers won or where they
Yeah.
came close to winning or something, and then the Spurs and Grizzlies. Those are like the only couple times I can really ever remember it. But I mean, this first round's trying to at least to prove me wrong. Um, but yeah, I mean, it's been a great first round. I mean, what are your favorite series? Least favorite series?
Well, I think the most, I would say, interesting series. And they've already played two games. The second game was actually last night, and it was a blowout. But I think it is a very interesting series because of the history from last year, the two teams that are in it, the players that are in it. I think there's a lot of storylines, and I'm talking about the Heat and Bucks series. Now, like I said, last night the Bucks won by 34. It was never close. They're up there basically at 30 points in the first quarter. I think it was. I think they were up 26, but the series from last year and how that all worked out with the Bucks. They've met in the second round last year in the bubble. The Bucks basically got swept. They lost in 5 games. They really should have got swept, honestly. People were thinking, is this kind of now going into this year they have to play the Heat again in the first round? The Bucks could easily lose that series. What would happen? I know Giannis just signed the contract. Would Coach Bud get fired? Giannis possibly think about anything? Even though he just signed the contract, that's 3 straight years that you've lost when you've been one of the favorites to get to the NBA finals and you haven't got past the conference finals. You've lost to the same team twice, 2 years in a row. So I think there was a lot of stuff riding on the Bucks. But they've shown it was really that game one where that was back and forth. It went to OT. The Heat didn't play great. I mean, Bam and Jimmy, I think, were 8 of 32 for the game, and they still almost won. So I think that was some concern for the Bucks on that side. But then game two, they came out, they destroyed them. I think the series is over. I wouldn't be surprised if it is a sweep. Honestly, I think the Bucks are the better team. But now that they've won those first 2 games, especially that first game, I think if the Bucks lost that first game, I think this would be much more of a series. I think the Heat could possibly win, but since the Bucks won that first game, and I know it's obviously easier to say this now that the Bucks have won the second game, but I think most people thought that when the Bucks won that first game, they were going to win game two, or at least that they were going to win the series pretty easily now, compared to if they'd lost that first game. So even though the series does seem to be pretty over, at least in my mind, I think it was one of the more interesting series in the first round so far.
Yeah, it's definitely been, I think, most people's kind of go-to series. I still think it's gonna be more than 4 games. I still think that he'd have a chance to win. I mean, the Heat are the lower seed, so again, like it's gonna go. I mean, they're still gonna have their home games. I like the Bucks. I liked the Bucks before the series started. I think the Bucks are a different team than the last couple of years. I'm not gonna say that they're completely different, completely renovated, but I still think they're a slightly tougher, not as regular season heavy team. I mean, they didn't have the regular season dominance they had the past couple of years. I mean, they were only the 3 seed, but I think with the addition of Drew Holiday, I think with the experience in the playoffs they've been able to kind of just learn from that and say, hey, like, we can't do this or we can't do that. And I think it's showing this. I think it's definitely showing this year against the Heat. Yeah, the first game was huge, like you said. If Jimmy and Bam just play better, I mean, they probably win that game. I mean, they definitely do. The second game was, you're right. I mean, it just was it was a blowout. but I still think the Heat have a chance. I mean, I'm not going to underestimate the Heat. They made the finals last year. I think they have some. I mean, Spoelstra is a top 5 coach, if not, more than top 5 coach. Jimmy is a top, number 1 guy, as in not talent wise, but motivational leader wise. He's one of those guys that he's a better leader than most number ones in the league. So I'm not, if I'm a Heat fan, I'm definitely, scared, but I still think I'd have a chance in this series. Other series that I liked, I mean, the first games at least, I'd probably say the Hawks and Knicks, where it was a great game. And I mean, Madison Square Garden, even just watching it on TV, like that's one of those games that you realize, like, wow, like I didn't even realize that, the fans being at games like mattered to a TV spectator. I don't even know. I don't think the Madison Square Garden was at full capacity, but I think it was only around like 50 or something.
It was 15,000 people.
I don't know if I don't know what the ratio of that.
That's like I think 85%.
85%. So yeah, I mean, they're not even full. And I mean, yeah, that place was so loud that, like, yeah, you just kind of realize, like, wow, okay. Even as watching it on TV, fans matter. But
Yeah.
at least as far as the game was concerned, I think for the league, it's great to have the Knicks back in the playoffs and in a series that is going to be competitive. I see this series going probably 7, maybe 7. It's going to be a super competitive. Trae Young, I mean, first, I think Knicks fans, they already hate Trae Young now.
Yeah.
And I think it's super easy to hate him just because the way he plays the game is, I think the league needs to change it. I don't know that they actually will kind of make any concrete rule changes to prevent, sculpting your game around getting to the free throw line and creating foul shots. But I think it's going to be a super competitive series. I think the Hawks are a pretty solid team. I mean, Trae Young, John Collins didn't have an awesome game 1, but I think it's going to be super competitive. I don't even think Julius Randle played well. I mean, he had a pretty bad game and they almost won that game. So I kind of like the Knicks in this series, but I mean, what, as a Knicks fan, do you like the Knicks or?
Well, I actually like the Hawks in the series, and it hurts to say because I think they're very evenly matched. But I think when it comes to the end of the game, at least watching more Knick games, they're very ISO heavy at the end of games, and they're 4-minute, 2-minute offense at the end of games and close games is basically give it to Randall and ISO and have him make a play or create a tough shot or kick out for a 3, which they're not a great 3-point shooting team. They were 10 of 30 in game 1, which is I think it'll take, but the Hawks were 12 of 34, and usually the Hawks are better 3-point shooters, so you can only expect that number to go up for the Hawks. And the Knicks number is rather going to stay there or go down. So I think there's concern there. If you want to look for a positive for the Knicks, it was that Randall was 6 of 23. I don't think that's going to happen again. They don't really have anyone. I guess you have Collins to guard him, but Collins, he's very athletic, but he's not great defensively. So I think Randall can definitely abuse him in that matchup. So I expect Randall to be better, which again is somewhat of a positive because obviously you lost by 2 points with Randall having possibly his worst game of the season. But I just something about the Hawks. I mean, we said it, when McMillan was, named interim head coach after they fired Lloyd Pierce. This team just changed. I think it's just a completely different team than what it was before. I mean, clearly. And I think they're just better down the stretch. And that's honestly, if you just watch that game 1, you could see the difference in possessions down the stretch. Trae Young was making every right decision, whether it was scoring the ball, passing it for 3s, making good rolls to Capella. Just he was making every right decision. I think he did have 1 turnover, but it was on a lob, I think, to Capella. So again, still probably the right decision. I think he just missed the pass. But again, if you look at the Knicks offense down the stretch, it's concerning because they just don't have a true offense. It's more just ISO. And that's, Randall's a good player, but he's not like a Kevin Durant or a LeBron where if I ISO with him, I'm pretty confident we're going to score or at least have a really good possession. So I think, again, like you said, I think this will be a very even matchup. I can definitely see it going 7. But I think in my mind, I do have the Hawks winning though. And it hurts to say, like I said, because I do like the Knicks, but I think the Hawks are a better team overall.
I think they probably have the best player in the series. even though Lloyd Pierce getting fired changes team, I still think with Thibodeau, I mean, I don't know if he wins coach of the year, but I mean, he's second. So yeah, I don't know. I think it'll be a competitive series. I think, yeah, we'll see. We'll see. Other series that, I mean, I guess I'll just go to the Mavs and Clips. My initial take, at least when I was watching the game, was wow, Pandemic P he's back, and I just couldn't believe it because it's been so long, and the fact that the Clippers are still just choking and choking in the playoffs, and it's people are going to talk about last year, and that's true, and they did choke last year. Even before that, even before last year with the Chris Paul Lob City era, like they choked then too. They choked a 3-1 series lead to the Rockets. But yeah, I think Paul George started in the first half. He was like 1 for 7, and he was horrible. I think his second half numbers, they were better, but they looked better on paper. But I don't think he played a bad game. He just didn't play very well. Kawhi also just not great. I mean, I think the Clippers signed him thinking that you're basically signing the best player in the world. After he basically led the Raptors to beating that Golden State Warriors team, even though they were injured, but still, they thought they were getting the best player in the world, and they thought Paul George was probably a top 15 player at worst, honestly. And last night, or not last night, but game one, they were the second and third best players in the game. Luka Doncic was amazing. It's insane. He's what? I'm like 22 years old, and he had a triple double last night. He's what? I think he's got a triple double in over 50% of his playoff games so far. I think he's played 7 and he's got 4 triple doubles, which is insane. I don't even think people around him played well at all. I think Kristaps is kind of just, I don't even know if he's going to be good ever. He doesn't have, I don't think he has what the Clippers have. At least he doesn't have a Paul George, like Kawhi does. If the Dallas Mavericks win this series, though, it's going to be absolutely crazy. Just because whoever decided, for the Clippers to, I guess, tank or manage their seeding, they're going to be looked at, in that front office, and they're going to be getting some questions because you lose games to avoid potentially playing the Lakers. I think you would have been a 3 seed. You would have been playing the Blazers, so it wouldn't have mattered anyways. You would have been able to play the Blazers, who aren't as good as the Mavericks. There's a reason the Blazers are a lower seed than the Mavericks, and you kind of you tank, and you end up with the Mavericks. And the Mavericks right now, I mean, at least game one, they look like the better team, overall team. You have to look at the firing of Doc Rivers, and you say, was this worth it or not? Especially if the Mavericks win the series. I don't know if Tyronn Lue's a better coach. I thought that the hiring of Tyronn Lue and the trading for Rajon Rondo, I thought that would potentially change the culture in the playoffs. It hasn't yet. It'll be interesting to see if Paul George ever has a good playoff game. I don't think he's had a good playoff game since he was on probably the Pacers. I mean, he probably had a couple good games on the Thunder, but not that I even really remember. So yeah, what were your takes on that game one?
Yeah, I mean, if Luka, he went 5-11 from 3. If he's gonna shoot like that from 3, there's no way, at least in my mind, that the Clippers can win this series, no matter how George and Leonard play. Because if Luka's going to put up 30 plus points and he's going to be efficient at it, which is his only downside, honestly, in his game, and other than defense, obviously, but is his efficiency. So if he's going to be efficient, not just from the field, but from 3, I don't really see a way the Clippers can win. I will say the one thing though is that the Clippers did not shoot the 3 well. They were 11 of 40, and again, like we said before the playoffs started, this is the best 3-point shooting team of all time statistically. Obviously you'd probably say the Warriors would be, but statistically it is the Clippers. So I don't expect them to go 11 for 40. I mean, Leonard was 1 of 6, George was 2 of 8, Marcus Morris was 0 of 6. I mean, you're not expecting those numbers for the rest of the series, but even still, I think this will be a very close series. I think most of these series are very close series. I think maybe with the exception of a couple. I think a lot of them are going to be game 6s and game 7s, honestly. And this one, I think, is definitely going to go at least game 6 and possibly game 7. But I think it'll be interesting to see if who's the better player this entire series. Is it Luka or Leonard? Because obviously it's not going to be George. It's not going to be anyone else. So is Luka? If whoever the best player in the series is, I think is going. That team is going to win this series. So in my mind, I think it actually will be Luka. I think obviously they played last year. It was completely different circumstances. They still went to Game 6 last year when it really should have been 5 games. If anything, obviously that buzzer beater last year, but this year he's way more mature. He's just a way better player, and you could see it in that game one. Again, it's only been one game, but he's a better player. So I will be interesting to see at the end of the series who the better player was. And in my mind, I think it's going to be Luka. I don't know if you have Luka or Kawhi, but again, like I said, in my mind, I think it's Luka.
I think theoretically Kawhi is the better player right now, at least. But if we're making me predict who's going to be the better player in the series, I don't know. I don't think Luka has to be the better, or sorry, I don't think Kawhi has to be the best player in the series for them to win. I just think he has to make it close at least. Luka can technically be the best player. It's just, Kawhi has to be a close, 1B there, and then George has to be not pandemic P for them to take this series, at least not 1 for 7 from 3 pandemic P or whatever it is.
Yeah.
I don't expect Marcus Morris to go, 0 for 6 from 3. I don't expect that to happen again, but yeah, I think they can afford to have some Paul George struggles, but the rest of the team really can't play nearly as bad. I don't expect them to. I still like the Clippers in this series. I still think, again, they're the better team. You can't expect a lot from their bench players, but I still think they have a deeper roster than the Mavericks do. Maybe not necessarily deeper, but I still think Rajon Rondo's he's a veteran. Pat Bev's a veteran. Zubac has had playoff experience even, and looking at the Mavericks roster, I mean, they've had playoff experience. In game 7, like, I don't know. I just, and anything can happen in a game 7, but do I trust anybody on that Mavericks roster other than Luka in a game 7? Not really. And now I guess you could technically maybe say the same about the Clippers, but honestly, I mean, Paul George, yeah, pandemic P, but he's had plenty of game 7s, and Kawhi Leonard obviously, carried a team. Marcus Morris he's a grit and grind player. Rajon Rondo has been, in playoff series for the past decade now. So I still like the Clippers to win the series. I was much higher on the Clippers before this game 1. Like, if you made me, that was a team that I potentially could have seen winning the finals. If you asked me that now, I don't know that I tell you they can win the finals. I'm scared of their playoff struggles, and I still love this team. I still think they're a pretty solid team, but I'm scared of their struggles. And I look at other teams like the Suns, and I know the Lakers didn't win game 1, but I still like I guess I like the Lakers more than the Clippers, just because this game 1 just really scares me. I'm excited to see game 2. I'm excited to see the rest of the series because this might be my favorite series, not necessarily because I think it's super close. Yeah, I think this might be my favorite series, but yeah.
Yeah, I think what's at stake is definitely the biggest because, like you were saying, they lost the last 2 games against the Rockets and Thunder in order to avoid the Lakers in that second round. And, I guess we can get into the Lakers game, but if, let's say the Clippers, let's say the Clippers win, or even if they lose, let's say the Clippers lose this first round and then the Suns win. Imagine how that would be, that they did all that to avoid the Lakers, and then they would have to play the Suns in the second round if they actually were the 3 seed. But everything that they did just wouldn't have even worked out, not even close. So yeah, this is a huge series, not only because you have to win the first round anyways, but because of them tanking those last 2 games to avoid the Lakers. So that the earliest they play is the conference final. So there's a lot at stake for the Clippers, and obviously Leonard can be a free agent at the end of this year. I guess we could talk about that later when the playoffs are over, but he still can be a free agent after this year. I would expect him to re-sign, but again, if they were to lose this first round, I think there's serious concern that he would leave. I don't know where he'd go. I don't even know if he would leave, but there's definitely it's a real possibility if they were to lose in the first round.
Yeah, I still, even just thinking about them losing in the first round is just so crazy to me, because especially if the Suns managed to beat the Lakers in the first round, just think about how wide open the West would be.
Yeah.
And the Clippers lose, and that's their year to win. Last year, honestly, was probably their year to win it, even though you had the bubble and stuff like that. But last year they were the heavy favorites. They were the team to win it. and obviously they didn't. And now this year, you're looking at the Lakers. I mean, the Lakers are clearly heavy favorites in the West to start, or at least favorites, definitive favorites. And the Lakers lose in the first round, and the West is looking wide open. And it's between the Suns, the Jazz, and like the Mavericks, and you end up losing in the first round of the Mavs. And yeah, that would be so bad. And I
Yeah.
don't know if you'd fire Tyronn Lue on the spot. I don't think you would. I just think you can't really fire two coaches in 2 years. I think that's tough, but you would be in a horrible spot, especially. And if Kawhi left, not only, you're stuck with Paul George and aging Paul George, but you have no draft picks at all. Like,
Yeah.
that's bad.
But I guess we can go to the Laker game now. Obviously, this game was on Sunday. Sunday, I think it was afternoon, like 3:00. The Lakers lost 99-90 to the Suns. This was a game where this just looked like, I don't know what was with the Lakers. I think maybe maybe they were just rusty, but again, it's kind of hard to be rusty. They have played a couple games together, the starting five. But I will say the biggest issue for this team is that Drummond is still on this team, or that he's still playing. I don't think he should play at all. He doesn't do anything. He clogs the lane for LeBron and Anthony Davis to drive. I think we were saying this after the playing games. He just doesn't do anything for this team. He's not good defensively. They don't really need rebounding that much, honestly. And he can't shoot. He can't pass. He can't do anything. So I don't really understand his purpose on this team. He only played 19 minutes, which I think he should play even less than that. And again, we can get into Davis and LeBron. They didn't play well. They have to play better if they're going to win this series, obviously. But I just think Drummond's a big concern for them right now because I don't know what his role on this team is. He just doesn't do anything for them.
Yeah, starting from the top, looking at LeBron, I think he definitely didn't play well, but I'm not like really worried about it. I think, like many people have said, if you just kind of look at LeBron's overall just playoff career, his game ones are typically, feel out games. I don't love to call it that, but he's typically just a little bit worse in game ones than he is the rest of the series. He's a little bit more passive and cautious because he just doesn't have necessarily a huge game plan on what teams are going to do and what they want to do. I'm not worried about LeBron. I agree with you on the Drummond thing. He's just bad. He, at best, to me, is a player who he's a good player on in the regular season on a good team, maybe, and that's at best. He's a team that he's a player that, if a team like the Celtics, let's say, they need rebounding or they need a big man, he can help the Celtics get rebounds if they're a horrible rebounding team. But, other than that, I just don't think he really fits on a team. And I think teams are going to clearly see that now after him signing with the Lakers this season. I just don't think he's very good. I've never been a big Drummond guy or anybody like Drummond. I just don't think they're good. If you can't shoot free throws, if you can't shoot the ball, if you have no skill other than just rebounding, you just do nothing for me. And I know that, he's gonna have some nice stats when you look at the stat sheet at the end of the game for the most part, and at least in the regular season. But yeah, I just don't think he's good. I don't think he should play. My biggest concern though about the Lakers is Anthony Davis. Going into the year, this was a guy who was supposed to be the best player on this team, theoretically, at least. He was supposed to be the best player on this team. He was supposed to, they won the championship. Obviously, LeBron was the guy on that championship team, but this was supposed to be where they kind of just, if LeBron's here and Davis is a little bit lower, this is the year that they kind of just, Anthony Davis slowly starts to overtake LeBron for that best player and the guy on this team. That's the handoff right there. And it's been anything but that this year, and especially with the injuries. And now we go into this game one, and Davis just looks flat out kind of just bad. Not only was he bad, but I mean, Ayton was a better player than him in game one. Just definitively, he let Ayton just destroy him, and Ayton was the better player. And Ayton is the third best player in the Suns. And if that happens, the Lakers will actually lose a series. Like LeBron would have to go crazy if Davis lets Ayton do that to him. So that's my biggest concern as if I was a Lakers fan. But overall, am I worried about the Lakers in the series? No, I'm not. At the end of the day, the Phoenix theoretically should win the first two games. Obviously, if they do win the first two games, they're gonna, they're favored to win the series then. But theoretically, Phoenix should win these first two games. I'm not worried about it. I think the Lakers rebound. I think they take game two. I think they probably take game three. And then I think after that, maybe they take game four. I don't think I think it'll be probably go six, but I don't see it being a 7 game sweated out series. Maybe it does happen. But I like the Lakers to win this series still. I'm not worried. Like it's LeBron. He's never lost a first round. And I don't think that means anything because he's never been in this type of West. Obviously, last year, he was in the West too, but it was just the West just wasn't as competitive as it was this year or other years, at least last year with the bubble. And he was the first seed, so he's never been in this type of first round. He really hasn't. The only year I can think of where his first rounds were really competitive was that one year against like the Pacers, but that wasn't even competitive. That was just the Cavs are not really a great team that year, and they kind of just didn't even care. So I'm not worried. I'm not worried. I don't know if you are, but
Yeah, I would say, I mean, game two, I think is tonight, Tuesday. So I think the Lakers will come out and win this game. I think they'll play much better. LeBron will be just more aggressive. I don't think he was as aggressive as he could have been on Saturday or Sunday. And Anthony Davis, yeah, he was 5 of 16. Got completely outplayed by Aiden. I don't think that's going to happen the rest of the series. And if it does, then the Suns definitely have a real chance of winning this series, but I don't think it will. I mean, we know who the better player is between the two. But if they come out and they look like the Lakers, like the old Lakers, I guess I should say, in game two tonight, the Lakers will win the series. I think in 6 games. Chris Paul did have that shoulder injury, which I think is being somewhat underrated in this series, in that when he came back, he couldn't really shoot the ball. That shoulder was really bothering him. So I don't know if that was a game thing or maybe that's going to be like a week to week thing. Obviously he'll play through it, but how much is that going to affect him? Because they need him to be big for the Suns. Because Booker, I think he will. I think Booker will have a big series, but I don't really think they have anyone to guard him. Obviously, Caldwell Pope, I guess, can maybe guard him, but he's not going to guard, Devin Booker. At least not going to stop him. So they don't really have anyone for him. So I think that's a problem. But if Paul is not going to give you an efficient 20 and 10 every game, I don't think you could win this series. So I really want to see how much that shoulder is going to bother him for the rest of the series. But I mean, I agree with you. I think most people would probably agree with us in that if the Lakers win game two tonight, I think the series is more than likely over. And it's weird to say because it's 1-1, but going back to LA, I think they would have the momentum at that point. I think LeBron would just take over this series, honestly. So yeah, I would probably say 6 games. I'd be surprised if it went 7, but I think 6 games is probably the perfect number for the series.
yeah, I think Phoenix honestly like has to win game two.
Yeah.
And it may still be competitive even if the Lakers win game two, but I would just be shocked if the Lakers won game two when the Suns somehow managed to win this series.
Yeah.
I'd be surprised if they won it regardless, but yeah. But yeah, I mean, even the Lakers win the series. So if I was a Suns fan, like this year was a huge success. I can't get too mad, but at the same time, I also understand that Paul's aging, and even though the rest of this team is pretty young, I mean, other than that, I don't know who your oldest player really would be. It'd probably be like Jay Crowder, like, and he's not even old. He's a role
Yeah.
player too. Your team's pretty young, but also Chris Paul's. He's the heart and soul of that team. He's getting up there, so you don't have too many years to kind of compete for this. So, but yeah, I think yeah. Other series, I mean, I don't know if you have any, huge inputs for other series. I guess we could talk
Well,
about.
I was gonna say Nets Celtics. I think that's out of the other series. I think that's probably the most interesting. Even though I think it'll probably be a sweep. Honestly, I really think the Nets will probably sweep them. If they don't, I think it'll be 5 games. The first game was very competitive, at least for the first half. I thought the Celtics had a really good game plan for that first half, but when the second half came, I mean, Kemba wasn't great all game. That definitely didn't get the same performance as you did in that first playing game, which you're going to need if you have to win this series. I mean, you need Kemba to go for 25 points every single game, and you need Tatum to be amazing every single game, and he wasn't. The first half he was pretty good, but the second half he was really bad. I don't expect that to keep happening, but again, you need him. You need him to be amazing every single game. You need him to put up 30 to 40 points every single game, be efficient, be just a huge problem for the Nets, which obviously he's going to be anyways, because he's I guess he's technically the fourth best player in the series, right? I mean, you wouldn't have him above Durant, Harden, Irving, right?
Tatum. Yeah, no, I would say he's probably the fourth best. I think you could maybe argue third. I was actually Bleach Report put out I think it was Bleach Report. They had a top 25 player list they put out recently, so that might be something we react to in the future. But I think if we went off their list, Tatum would be number four, and I think most people would probably have him at number four, number three, depending on how they view Kyrie. But yeah,
Yeah.
I think pure talent, skill wise, right now he's probably the fourth best.
Yeah, which which is crazy to think about that in a series. The best three players could be on one team, probably for any team, just about every single team in the league, honestly, except for a handful. But yeah, I just think the series is over. I really do. I think the Celtics, if they won that game one, maybe they can get it to six. But again, I'd still pick the Nets, obviously. But I really don't see the Celtics team being able to win. Again, maybe a game, but that's all I'll probably give them.
Yeah, no, I think the series is over too. It was over from the start. Even if they won this, even if they somehow won this game, and even if they won it in some weird, convincing fashion, I just no. Tatum didn't play particularly well. He's a guy that he has to average probably 40 points a game. If they want to even be competitive in games to begin with. They were competitive in this game, but not in the, you know, I think it was more the Nets letting the Celtics be competitive for whatever reason. I think they just didn't play a great game. Tatum didn't really play that well. Kemba looked, like Kemba has basically the whole season, just not great. Other than that one Wizards game in the play-in, basically. And other than that, I just think the Celtics team is also it's just not very good if you just look at the rest of the roster. Obviously, without Jaylen Brown, Fournier, bad pickup. Marcus Smart, I'm excited for him to not be on this team in the near future. Robert Williams, I mean, he's a legit player. I think he's going to be a legit player. But it's, he's not even, he's still, he's a speck of sand compared to, what they would actually need to win this series. So yeah, the series is over. As a Celtics fan, we'll see what happens in the offseason. I expect Tatum and Brown to come back next season really in some solid shape, ready to go. We'll see what's around them. We'll see. I know there's been some reports about Ainge, maybe, we'll see what happens in that Celtics front office. I don't think, Ainge will still be the GM, but there were some rumors about some shakeup in that front office in general, maybe some delegated responsibilities. So we'll see what happens there. But yeah, the Celtics team needs to change a lot of things. I don't think they're going to fire Stevens. They're not, but something's got to change. Other series is the Trailblazers and Nuggets, I think, is going to be a very good series, like it kind of their series have been a couple years ago, and that when the Blazers won in, I want to say that was in 7.
Yeah.
I think it's going to be a good series. I think if the Nuggets had Murray, I mean, this probably is not nearly as good of a series, but I mean, honestly, like who's the best player in the series? I was just kind of thinking, and I don't know. I mean, I guess it's, it is Jokic, but
Yeah.
Jokic is also a center. So it's kind of harder to, I guess, at least, down the stretch, it's sometimes it's harder to believe that Jokic is, I guess, the best player in every scenario. I think the Blazers have a real shot to win this series now. But yeah, I mean, game 2, I guess, didn't, do the Blazers any favors, but I mean, what were your takes on the series? What are your takes?
Well, I do think Jokic is the best player in the series, and even though he is a center, I mean, he's basically a point guard. I mean, obviously, he averaged 8 assists, and he has the ball almost every single possession. And I think it does actually help that he's not bringing the ball up; he's getting the ball in a spot when he gets the ball, so he can make his decisions there, which is a lot closer to the basket, where he could do the post fadeaway, he could turn and spin, get a foul, get layup. Pass it for a three. You can do so much stuff with the ball in the post. So I think that actually helps, honestly. But in terms of the series, I do like the Nuggets, and you're right. If they had Murray, I think it's probably I think the Nuggets would win this series pretty easily because the Blazers just aren't good defensively at all. So you had Murray in there. I mean, we know what happens in the playoffs with Murray. He gets a lot better. Obviously, we can't see that this year, but I just think the Nuggets are the better team even without him. You're gonna need Lillard to do what he's doing. I mean, he's been great the first 2 games. You're gonna need him to keep doing that, but then you're also gonna need McCollum to be better or Nurkic to be better. Nurkic was not good last night. What was his numbers? He was 2 of 8. 7 points. He fouled out. He cannot guard Jokic at all. They're gonna have to figure that out. I don't know if it's double teams or if it's just letting Jokic do what he wants and trying to close in on the other guys, which it seems like they've been doing. I think Jokic, he had 38 last night, and I think he had 35 or 36 in game 1. So I guess that's what they're trying to do. Maybe they try to switch up for game 3, but they're going to need Nurkic or McCollum to be like probably the second best player in the series because the Nuggets. But I mean, I guess Porter could potentially be the second best player in this, or the third best player in the series behind Lillard and Jokic. But if McCollum is that third best player, I think the Blazers have a chance. But
I think they need both McCollum and Nurkic to be the third and fourth best players in the series. Probably. I think they probably need that.
I think they do need that. I just don't think Nurkic can be. I think with him guarding Jokic, I don't think there's any way he's going to have a big impact on this series.
I'm not saying he is. I'm just saying they need that to win the series.
No, I know. I'm saying in my mind, I just don't see how he can be because he has to worry about Jokic on the defensive end, and offensively, I just don't think he can get into a rhythm, honestly. So unless something changes, or again, unless they start doubling, so they take some of that defensive pressure off Nurkic, maybe he can be better offensively. But the way it is right now, he's somewhat of a non-factor, honestly. So he's gonna have to play better. Portland's bench has to play better. They were terrible last night. I think they had 13 points as a bench unit, which you just need scoring from that bench because again, your defense is not good. The Nuggets can score very easily. So if your bench unit isn't giving you anything at all, there's no way you win the series anyway. So there's a lot of stuff that should go right for the Blazers, I think, to win the series. And when looking at it, I think there's just less things that have to go right for the Nuggets. So that's why I'd go with the Nuggets in the series.
I think the Nuggets probably win the series. I still think it's close. I still think the Blazers have a real shot though to win. I don't expect Robert Covington to play 37 minutes and only have 3 points, 1 rebound, 1 assist ever. He's not a great player by any means, but yeah, their bench. Yeah, I don't know if you said it's 13. That's probably about right. Their bench didn't play well. I think Nurkic didn't have a great game. I think he'll probably play better. I mean, he's not going to stop Jokic by any means. He's not going to be a lockdown, type of guy. Nobody can do that in the league at all anyways. But yeah, I think it'll be a close series. I mean, I expect Lillard to have great games across the board. He's just a consistently great player. I don't expect to have many dud games. So I think they'll have that going for him. I'd like to see McCollum step up as well. I mean, if he can return to that initial regular season McCollum before the injury, a guy who was looking like he'd be on an all-NBA team potentially, I think that'd be huge for the Blazers.
And the
yeah.
thing about last time was that McCollum was actually 9 of 12, but he needs to shoot more than 12 shots per game. If he's going to have a true impact on the game, because like I said, he was 9 of 12, 21 points. That's pretty good, obviously, but he has to shoot 18 to 20 shots in my mind. And I think he is a very efficient player, so I don't think it's a problem efficiency wise, but he's going to have to shoot more shots in order for them to win, I think.
I don't know if it's is it a game plan thing? Is it that's McCollum's play? I'm not too sure, but
I mean, who else is? It's just because no one else is really taking shots for them. I mean, the next guy after Lillard and McCollum was 9, and that was Norman Powell. So where else were those shots coming from? I mean, they only took 73 shots, which is pretty low in the NBA, I guess, nowadays. But I think you have to take more shots than 12. If you're going to be the third best player in the series, you have to take more than 12 shots per game.
yeah, no, I would definitely agree. Other series we haven't talked about, I guess, quickly. I mean, Wizards Sixers. Game 1 was competitive. I don't see it being a real series. I don't know if you do though.
I don't see it being a real series. I think it could go 6. I think 6 is the most it could go. But this probably will be a 5-game series. I don't think it'll be a sweep. I think the Wizards are. If you have 2 players like that, I don't think you can get swept. No matter what team you're playing. Maybe like the Warriors, like from 2016 or 2017, but that's not what this Sixers team is. And if Tobias Harris doesn't have the game that he has, I think the Wizards do win this game. And I know that's a lot to say because he had 37 points, but Embiid was good, but he didn't seem like he had he didn't seem like he was dominating. He was 9 of 16, but he wasn't truly dominating. He only played 30 minutes too. I think that's somewhat concerning for the Sixers is the pace of play because the Wizards are the fastest pace in the league, and Embiid gets very tired very easily. Even though he's in better shape this year, he still gets very tired. So I think that is some concern for them. Obviously, it's not gonna matter that much because he's still gonna put up 30 points in 30 minutes, which is crazy. But I think I kind of like their game plan. The Wizards, it was they did double Embiid. The doubles weren't great doubles. I think they have to be better at doubling him, but they were setting doubles his way. They were making other guys beat them, which I do. I mean, in my mind, I think in your mind, I think most people's minds, Tobias Harris isn't going to go 15 to 29 from the field, score 37 points. He's probably going to give you 20 points per game. So I think there is some positives for the Wizards, but I mean, I don't think anyone's expecting them to win the series. I think if anything, it goes 6. But again, it's not much of a series in my mind, honestly.
Yeah, no, I would agree. As far as the Sixers are, when I look at the Sixers, that first guy I look at is it's Simmons. I just think, yeah, I mean, he had 15 rebounds and 15 assists, but you need that scoring element. He went 0 for 6 from the free throw line, and he has no way to score the ball really, consistently at least. And unless Tobias Harris wants to score 30 plus a night, Embiid's going to have to play like MVP Embiid for them to. I mean, they're going to win this series probably regardless, but for them to win future series, I guess maybe even they'll win the Knicks/Hawks series regardless too. But for them to win against a legitimate, championship contender team, either Simmons is going to have to find something, which he's probably not. Tobias Harris is going to have to consistently score 25 plus a game. He's probably not. Or Embiid's going to have to play like MVP Embiid, be the best player in any series in the East. I don't know if that happens. We'll see. We'll see. I think out of all those three, I think that's the most likely to happen. That is Embiid plays like the best player in the world in a series against, the Nets or the Bucks. We'll see if that happens, but one of those three things has to happen. And I don't see Simmons somehow finding his offensive game, and not necessarily shooting wise, but just a way to score in the playoffs consistently. He just can't do it. And he can play make, he can rebound, he can play defense, obviously. But yeah, I just it's going to be so tough for them to win against a Nets or a Bucks when Simmons is your second best player. It's a blessing and a curse, honestly.
Yeah, he only had 6 points, and again, I'm not worried about his shooting. Like he doesn't have to shoot from the outside to impact the game offensively, but he has to score more than 6 points. I mean, he's now in his 6th year in the league, and he keeps talking about himself as like a perennial all-star type of guy and one of the better players in the league. The better players in the league don't have 6 points. I know he does a lot defensively and on the boards and assist-wise, but he has to score more points for them. Again, in this series, it's not going to matter. Maybe even for the next series, it's not going to matter. But if you do get to that conference finals or even the finals, he has to score at least 15 points per game, at least. You'd like to be 15 to 20, but he just has to be more impactful on the offensive end of the court.
Yeah, and honestly, looking at the playoff seedings for the East, I actually think the Sixers not having any tough matchups might be actually unfortunate for the Sixers. I'd like to see them kind of go against a legitimate round 1 or round 2 team. I don't know that that's going to happen for them. And then obviously you wouldn't want to play, the Nets and the Bucks. You wouldn't want to play both of them in the same playoffs, but at the same time, to me, when I look at the NBA, I kind of just see like, the better teams just win those series. And it's, if you're going to win the finals, you're probably going to have to, you playing the Hawks in round 2 versus playing the Bucks in round 2, that shouldn't be the differentiating factor between you winning the finals and not. So to me, I think you could honestly maybe argue it's a little bit of a disadvantage, just that your first real opponent might be in the conference finals against the Nets. And if the Nets are battle tested way more than you and have played through legitimate series and you haven't, that might cost them a game early, and that might be the differentiating factor as compared to them getting to play the Hawks or the Knicks in the second round, and the Nets have to play the Bucks in the second round. So, but yeah.
I think that is definitely something that could come up again. The Nets will play the Bucks most likely in that second round, so they will be tested. before that conference finals. I guess whoever comes out of that, Bucks or Nets. But I guess the last playoff series that we didn't talk about was the Grizzlies Jazz, which could have been one of the better games so far in the first round. Obviously it's two teams that are pretty boring. I mean, the best player, I guess, is Mitchell, who'd obviously didn't play game one. We'll probably talk about it, but and then Ja. So it's not the most exciting series, but I think that first game was a really good game. I think it will be a pretty good series. I think it will be close. Obviously, I think the Jazz will win. They are the better team, but it was definitely a really good game. And like I was saying, Mitchell didn't play. It seemed like he was going to play. I think we thought he was going to play going into the playoffs, and they held him out. I think it was like 2 hours before the game started. So definitely, I don't know what was going on. And he said he wanted to play. The team officials didn't want him to play. Who knows? Would they win game one with him? I mean, probably. He's obviously, he's probably the best player in the series, I guess you could say. So they probably do win that first game if he's playing, but it seems like he's going to play game two. But for that first game, the Grizzlies really played well. They really impressed me. I think Taylor Jenkins he's rising between the coaching power rankings. And I don't know where he'd be, but he's definitely rising. For this team that's not that good, honestly, to win those two playing games, to win the first game against the Jazz on the road, I think it's just really impressive. So I'm really impressed with their team and their coach. And look, do I think they're going to win the series? No, but I think they could put up a real fight for this whole series.
I think this is a one seed, 8 seed series that could honestly go 7. I don't see the Grizzlies winning it. I don't, but I think this could go 7. As far as looking at the Grizzlies, I mean, Ja, he's been about as great as a draft pick as the Grizzlies could expect. Dylan Brooks is looking, I mean, not necessarily an emerging star, but an emerging great player, I guess, if you want to say that. Valanciunas is a guy that, I mean, I guess you're happy you traded Gasol for him, a couple of years ago, definitely. I think this Grizzlies team's great. Looking at the Jazz, I still expect the Jazz to win the series. I think it probably goes 6. It could go 7, like I said, but I'm not sure. I'm sure that Mitchell will probably play game 2. I don't know. I mean, who knows what the team officials want to happen, I guess. But I know Mitchell definitely said he wanted to play game 1. And he was annoyed that he couldn't play game 1. I'm not too scared though, because again, this game was a 3-point game and the Jazz didn't have their best player, and he's also the best player in the series, and they also probably have the second best player in the series in Gobert. And I know he's not. I don't know if he's probably the second best player in the series. He's also probably the defensive player of the year. I think the Jazz win the series, but I mean, there's a reason that people have slept on the Jazz, and I think game 1 shows just this team just isn't really a 1 seed. I think they're probably more like a 4 or 5 seed, like they've been historically. They're a team that's, they can win a round. They're going to win this round, but after that, nothing's really guaranteed at all. They could easily lose round 2. They could easily. And yeah, I mean, I'm excited to see what happens, but I don't know exactly what you would change on this Jazz team. I don't know if you look at Mitchell and say you just need Mitchell to improve for the future. I know he didn't play game 1, but just in general, maybe Mitchell just needs to improve and take that next step. Maybe Gobert he just can't be your second best player on your team. Maybe that's also true. If he can only play defense and offensively, if you can't, revolve an offensive series of possessions around him, a game around him, can he be your second best player? I'm not sure. We haven't really seen a player like Gobert be a second best player on a team. I just think they're more of like Gobert's not a role player, but they almost have those types of players and those types of centers almost serve role player purposes on championship winning teams. So if Gobert's your second best player, that's probably not great, but yeah,
Yeah, it's Gobert is almost like Drummond, but he's just a way better version of Drummond. But not offensively, just defensively and game impactful wise, I would say. Offensively, he's the same. He clogs the lane. And he's a great screener, which I think does matter. I think having a guy who could set really good screens is huge for a team, especially like this, where Mitchell's your best player. Obviously, he's probably a top 20 player in the league, maybe top 25, I guess, but he's not like a top 10 guy. He's not like a Luka or like a Kawhi or anyone like that. So you really need someone like a Gobert on this team. But for him to be your second best player, it's hard to win when that guy's your second best player, a guy who can't create his own shot, where other teams just have guys who can create their own shots as their second best player. Even if they're not as good as Gobert overall wise, I'd rather have a guy who can create his own shot offensively, knowing that I can go to him at the end of games if I need to. Unlike Gobert, where you can't go to him at the end of games. He's not a great foul line or a free throw shooter. He can't. He can only shoot in the paint. He can only really dunk and do layups and tip dunks, which matters, but not when it comes to the playoffs. It's not as big of a deal, honestly. So Bogdanovich is going to have to be huge. Clarkson's going to have to be huge. I mean, Clarkson just won Sixth Man of the Year. I think it was last night, or yesterday they announced that they're going to need to be, 20 to 25 points for both of them, basically. And again, this is just the first round. I think, like we said, I think we'll win it, but we're kind of talking about the future, second round, possibly even conference finals. They're going to need to be big for them because, again, Gobert, he's not going to give that offensively. So for the first round, again, like we said, I think the Jazz will win probably 6 games. Could go 7 games possibly, but I'd be surprised if that happened, honestly. I think the Jazz are the better team. But it will be a very tough series. I think every single game will be very close, and it will come down to the end for most of the games.
Yeah, no, I agree. Part of me was thinking, game one, like I still wish the Warriors were in this playoff tournament, were in the playoffs. Like I know the Grizzlies won game one, but I really think the Warriors would have a better chance of winning this first round series against the Jazz, just because in a playoff series, if you have the best player on the court or in the series, that makes your chances of winning that series so much higher, just because these games are close. And in crunch time, it's something that the regular season statistics won't necessarily preach. And, the nerdy stats won't preach, but, being able to have the best player on a series in crunch time and playoff games, that's so huge. And the Grizzlies, they won game one, but in the future, that's going to be rough. I think the Warriors would have a better chance of winning the series, but
I actually think the Grizzlies have a better chance, only because I think the Warriors are very one-dimensional. I think it's Steph, and if he doesn't have a great game, they lose. If he has a great game, there's a chance that they win, but it's not guaranteed. And if you're looking at best players in the series, I think Steph would be number one, and then I think it'd be a lot of Jazz players, and then you get to the Warriors players. Well, between the Grizzlies and Jazz, I think it's Mitchell, Gobert, most likely is that second best player, and then I think you could easily switch between Grizzlies and Jazz players. So I actually think the Grizzlies do have a better chance of winning. Again, neither team would win that series, but I think I actually kind of like the Grizzlies better, at least basketball wise. I know entertainment wise, obviously you'd rather have the Warriors in there for Curry reasons. I mean, it's at least 4 games of having Curry, but basketball wise, I think the Grizzlies actually do match up better than the Warriors would.
I think the Grizzlies are a better team, like overall team. I just think that if you're saying, I just don't think the Grizzlies have a real chance to win the series. And I know they won game one, so it's weird to say, but I think the Grizzlies can be competitive. I think they can make the Jazz earn it. But are the Grizzlies going to win 4 games in a 7-game series? No. Could the Warriors? Could Steph Curry go off and shoot 55% from 3 and they win a series? I mean, probably not, but. I think there's a better chance that happens in the Grizzlies win a series. I mean, whatever, but yeah. Is there anything else you want to talk about for the NBA?
No, I don't think so.
All right. I mean, that's basically it for the start of the playoffs. Appreciate what you say to the end. I'm excited for the rest of the first round. The second round and third rounds are only going to get better and better. That's just how the NBA playoffs are. So, yeah, I mean, appreciate what you stayed to the end. We'll be back Thursday, Friday-ish. So yeah, feel free to also like all that stuff description, check it out. Starting to upload more TikToks, like I said, so stay tuned. All right, goodbye.